Chapter 30. Temptar clung to the building en masse, sniffing people who walked by and latching onto those coming and going, entering the brick storefront by a windowless metal door. Darkness permeated this locale. I became more anxious with each passing moment. Just as I was about to go in after Logan, he came out, 3 Temptar hanging from his arms and leg. "What were you doing in there?" I demanded. He gave me a startled look. "You shouldn't have gotten out of the car." I ignored his statement. "This isn't a good place." "That's why you shouldn't have gotten out. You don't want anyone to see you." He grabbed my hand and tugged me back. "But it's okay for you to be seen here?" I kept talking to him as he closed my door, then swiveled to face him when he got in. "Why were you here? Were you meeting Alexander? I thought you were done with him." I couldn't keep the hyper energy out of my voice. "Jessica," Logan said, his tone thick with strained patience. "You need to calm down. I promised Alexander a favor. I did the favor, and now it's done. He won't ask me to do anything else." I relaxed a little at his words. But why were the Temptare still hanging around him? They were more solid, buzzing in the space between us. I hunched my shoulders, not wanting any of them to get close to me. "Are you sure?" I didn't mean my tone to be accusatory, but Logan's defenses flared. "Yes, I'm sure," he snapped. But he didn't sound so sure. I kept quiet as he drove to Canal Street. He found a public parking space and came around to open my door for me. "Sorry," he said, giving me an apologetic smile as he took my hand and pulled me from the car. I didn't mean to get snappy. I pulled my hand free. "How involved are you with Alexander? What exactly is going on?" He studied me for a moment, as if trying to decide something. "How much do you know about Alexander?" "I know he's involved in something dangerous," I said. "I know you should stay away." Logan shook his head. "See, you don't know. Alexander was there for me when my dad wasn't. He's family. If he needs me to prove my loyalty, I'm gonna do it." "No, nothing bad. I don't want to talk about this anymore." He would have taken my hand, but I shoved it into my jeans pocket, making it unavailable. We walked across the street and settled into an open cafe. Logan studied the menu while I studied the Temptare lurking around him. I saw them everywhere now that I knew what to look for. They hunkered down in corners, sleeping, waiting for a victim. They clung to shoppers, drifting from one to another, seeking a listening ear or a weaker conscience. They were pestering Logan. He shook his head as if he sensed them at his ears, hissing and breathing. What thoughts were they putting into his mind? A young lady stepped up to the table with a pad of paper in her hand. "What can I get for you guys tonight?" Logan looked at me and I shrugged. "I'll get the red beans and shrimp," Logan said. "Me too," I said. She took our order and left, and I leaned across the table toward Logan. "What does Alexander have to offer you?" He hesitated. "I can't explain it." He didn't have to. It was written all over his aura. "Acceptance. Inclusion. A part of his group," I said. Logan shook his head, keeping his eyes down. "I can't be in his group." But his aura flared with desire. "Who not? The price is too high." "High, but you're rich." It was the wrong thing to say. Logan ground his teeth together. "That's what Alexander says too. Rich kids can't get their hands dirty." He was speaking in metaphors, I was certain, and the meanings were lost on me. Keeping my voice soft, I said, "Why do you want to be in his group?" "I can't explain it to you." Back to that. Maybe he had no words, or maybe he just didn't want to tell me. "What is the price?" Logan frowned at the table, stabbing the wood with his fork. The Temptare swarmed him, and I watched those in the corners lift their heads and sniff the air. Whatever the price, Logan was considering it. "I won't do it," Logan said, half to himself, half to me. The Temptare didn't hear him. My heart raced as I watched them weave their fingers through his hair and stroke the skin of his arm. With a dagger, I could dispatch with several of them, most of them, give Logan the time he needed to hold fast to his resolve. He would make the right decision without them to persuade him. But without a dagger, I would have to find another way to rid him of the Temptare. I reached my hand across the table and placed it over his fingers, halting the repeated, angry gestures of the fork. He stopped his movement and lifted his eyes to mine. I smiled at him, pulling as much energy from my soul as I could and expelling it through my fingers with the same intensity I would in the greenhouse. Grow. Let the light and goodness within him grow. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. Logan's aura lit up as if infused from within, and the Temptare backed off, releasing him and moving into the dark shadows, except for the stubborn one, which dove into his shirt and hid. Sometimes, he admitted, I want to, but... He put his other hand over mine. When I'm with you, I don't. My stomach nodded. I wouldn't always be here. And then what? I waited for Malik to appear on Sunday. He didn't. I said my prayers that night asking for special guidance over Logan. I also asked how I could reach Malik since he came and went as he pleased, basically leaving me on my own. I didn't expect a response, but as I knelt there, the words came to my mind so clearly that it could not have been my own thoughts. Open a window. I knew it didn't mean my bedroom window. Was it my own thought? Had I come up with the idea on my own? I was no longer certain I could tell the difference. Either way, it was worth a try. The only place I had complete privacy was the bathroom. I slipped out of my room and padded down the hall to the small toilet room. Once inside, I locked the door and faced the mirror. Then I gathered the energy around me and pulsed it outward, concentrating on Malik. A window spiraled open across the mirror, dissolving my reflection and instead showing me the angel. He was in a hospital, talking with an angel I didn't know. You're a shade, the other angel said to him. You might be able to heal him. I'm not his guardian, Malik said, and he sounded anxious. I've failed before. I can't always reach their souls. Just try, the angel said, placing a hand on Malik's shoulder. Malik let out a breath, and I sensed his determination through his uncertainty. Lead the way. They continued down the hallway, unnoticed by the mortals around them, and I followed, intrigued. They rounded a corner and entered a room where a small child lay sleeping. A white pillow engulfed his bald head, the rest of his body skin and bones. His breath came in rasping gasps. His parents have faith, the angel said. They've asked for healing. I would give it if I could. Instead, the father sent you. Malik ran his hand over the boy's fingers, a tender expression on his face that tore at my heart. Have you done this before? The angel asked, watching Malik. Yes, but I don't always succeed. He closed his eyes and exhaled, and the light around him spilled outward, filling the room with brilliance before shrinking and diving into the chest of the inert human boy. The child's chest expanded. He inhaled, his nostrils flaring around the apparatus attached to his nose. The other angel rested his hand on Malik's shoulder, and I sensed it was more than a gesture of support. The light grew brighter, and the boy's eyes opened, flickering in the brilliance around him. Malik's body convulsed, and he stumbled forward. The angel wrapped his arms around Malik's chest, securing him against him. It's done, he said. Thank you. Sure, Malik said, his voice soft. I'm always happy to help. Go rest. I'm sure the father will have another assignment for you soon. I withdrew my energy and let the window close. Blinking back a surprising emotional response, I turned out the lights and returned to my room, falling into my bed and folding my wings around me. Malik knew of his failures and weaknesses, but to me, he was the embodiment of perfection. Logan found me at my locker before first hour. Hey, he said, resting his arm against the locker beside mine. How was your Sunday? He'd never met me before class before, but I was pleased. The more time he spent with me, the less influence Alexander had over him. It was pleasant, I said, turning to face him. How was yours? He shrugged. I hung out with some friends like we do every Sunday. You should come next week. I can't, I said. Christine wants that to be a family day. I brightened as a thought occurred to me. I can see if you could come with us, though. It might be good for him to spend time with my foster parents and attend church with them. Logan didn't look as thrilled with the idea. Yeah, maybe, he said, his tone less than convincing. We started down the hallway in the same direction toward our history class, and then I spotted Malik by the stairwell, watching us. I switched directions. There's Malik, I said. I'll see you in class, Logan replied, not making eye contact with Malik. I frowned and stalled for a moment. Don't you want to say hi? Who am I? He's your friend, not mine. Logan continued down the hall without a backward glance. I stepped over to Malik, my brow furrowed. You're not being very friendly toward Logan. You're being friendly enough for the both of us, he said dryly. To your assignment, I said. You can't watch out for him if he doesn't want you around. Around when he doesn't know it, Malik said, but he grimaced. I didn't expect us to not like each other. He just doesn't know you. Anyone who knew Malik would like him. He was the most selfless soul I knew. I couldn't help myself. I reached a hand out and stroked the edges of his magnificent white wings. A little thrill rushed through my stomach, first because I was touching him, but also because this was something we had, he and I. Nobody else could see his wings. He closed his eyes a moment and reopened them, studying me. And you do? I nodded, thinking of what I'd seen the night before. I do. He touched the edge of my shirt, wrapping his finger around the hem and tugging me closer. Then he released me and stepped away from my traveling fingers. I'll see you in second period. Right. A sigh of longing escaped my lips. Somehow I would endure first period until I got to be with him. I frowned when I stepped into history and spotted Logan at our table, surrounded by 2 Temptare. What were they doing here? Hi, I said, settling down next to him and eyeing the vaporous shadows around him. Did something happen? What do you mean? He asked, not looking up from his cell phone. Your mood seems different. What I wanted to say was, you've got 2 creepers that you didn't have 5 minutes ago, but of course I didn't. It's not, he said, but I knew that wasn't true. Did you run into Alexander? I hedged. Yep. He shot me a furrowed look. What's your deal with Alex? I don't think he's a good influence on you, I said. You haven't been around long enough to know. He exhaled and pulled his school books from his backpack. It's nothing. Mr. King started class, stopping any further discussion, but I was left with the nagging knowledge that if it wasn't Alexander, something else had upset Logan's mood. And I didn't want to analyze it too carefully. By the end of the class period, Logan's mood had improved somewhat. I couldn't find my pen, so I took his, and he decided to make a game of it, snatching it back and teasing me. One Temptari abandoned him, but the other hovered nearby, waiting for the moment when Logan's mood would plummet, or some other opportunity to sneak in and bring his spirits down. I glared daggers at the offending spirit and wished for a real dagger. We said goodbye in the hallway, and I continued to second period, my own spirits lifting at the thought of seeing Malik. Bye, he greeted when I came in. He'd put his backpack in the chair next to him, though I wasn't sure if it was meant to keep distance between us or save a seat for me. I opted for the latter and moved it out of the way for myself. The tempter are laying it on thick, I breathed, sliding my chair closer. They're always around Logan. Malik frowned and rubbed his fingers over his brow. I never see any. You have too much light, I said, launching into my theory. They leave when you're around, but the problem isn't resolved. I grabbed his hand with both of mine, pretending like I didn't thrill at the touch of his skin beneath my fingers, pretending like it was an ordinary touch. If I had a dagger, I could dispatch with them. There are moments when I know he's on the brink of making the right decision, but the Temptare just won't go away. But you don't have a dagger, Malik said. You'll get one when you become a guardian. I won't, I said, withdrawing my hand as my shame flooded my limbs. I didn't want him to feel it. My dagger is gone. I'm sorry, Malik said, turning to me with a consoling expression on his face. I forgot. I shook my head. I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm looking for a solution. I'm the one around Logan who can see the Temptare. Together we can defeat them, Malik, if we work as a team. But I need a dagger. Malik nodded, his eyes unfocused as he considered my words. I can ask Barakiel if something can be done. That's not what I mean. That's nice, but it doesn't solve our immediate problem. I lowered my voice and leaned closer. Let me borrow your dagger. A dagger? He gave me a startled look. His hand went to the waistband of his pants, where I was certain he kept the dagger hidden. I'll use it to protect Logan. I just want to help him. Malik leaned away from me. He moved his hand from his side and rested it on the table in front of him. I don't think I can do that, he said slowly, not meeting my eyes. He didn't trust me. Disappointment tightened in my chest, and I let out a slow exhale. I wasn't entirely surprised, but his response stung all the same. "That's fine," I said, settling back in my own chair. "I'll find another way." But was it coincidental that Barakiel showed up at Christine's house during dinner a few nights later? I gave him a look of surprise when he walked in, then turned to Christine with the same expression. "We just found out a few hours ago," she said apologetically. "You're going to go stay with your mother for a few weeks." "Okay," I said, shooting a suspicious look at Barakiel. "You can finish eating," he said when I stood. "That's all right, I'm ready." "Did you want to get anything?" Christine asked. "Nope, I've got what I need there, and I'll be back." Christine wasn't quite as desperate when she hugged me goodbye this time. Apparently she had more confidence in my return. Barakiel and I walked around the block before I broached the subject of my departure. "Did I do something wrong?" I asked. "No, nothing, it's just time for you to return." "Because my light's diminishing? Earth has that effect on celestial beings." My wings fluttered. At least I was considered celestial. Did Malik say something? I wondered if my asking for the dagger had led to this. Should he have said something? A double-edged question. I shook my head, giving nothing away. Is he coming also? No. He needs to strengthen his bond with his assignment, and it would look too coincidental if you both disappeared at the same time. I grunted in affirmation. Logan wouldn't take too kindly to that. "You must be careful though, Jez. The mortal boy has grown quite fond of you." I shoved down the uncomfortable prickle of my conscience. "It's for his own good. I'm trying to help him." "We might not thank you for it." Barakiel stopped in the park and opened a portal in the grass at our feet. "Ha, you will. I was certain of it. Whatever hurt feelings Logan might have, he'd recognize the greater good in the redemption of his soul." I stepped through the portal, and a moment later, the fresh, pure air of Arcadia whirled around my face. I paused and inhaled, joy welling up inside of me just from being on campus. Sometimes it takes being away from the light to appreciate it, Barakiel said from behind me as he closed the portal. I wanted to kneel on the floor and dig my fingers into the carpet. Life and energy poured into my soul from every direction. I wondered how my little garden was doing. "Your schedule is in your room," Barakiel said. "Classes resume next week for you. You'll spend the next few days getting caught up." He had given me the chance to answer my question. "Thank you," I said, and I took off for the greenhouse to check on my little plants. Chapter 30 in. Classes had ended for the day, though a few angels still wandered around the greenhouse tending to their plants. I didn't see Master Sabriel. I made my way over to my garden plat, relieved to see several green shoots poking out of the soil. True to her word, Sabriel had not let my plants die. But neither had they grown at an extraordinary rate. It seemed the growth continued at the same rate as a plant growing on earth under a mortal's care. I knelt in the soil, determined to give them a little extra light. It was light that nourished us, and that was something I hadn't understood before. Our spirits needed the light, and our spirits strengthened our bodies. I reached my aura out, extending it like fingers toward the energy of the plants. The largest, nearly a bush now, reacted first, turning toward my aura, bending toward my figure as if I were the sun. The others were slower, but they also turned into me. I pulled my essence from my core, seeking my own light and pushing it toward them. Except I had little to give. They accepted what I offered, and the leaves shivered with the energy, but they didn't push outward with sudden growth. The roots didn't extend and no flowers bloomed, and I was depleted. "My light is weak," I whispered, and I felt a tremor of fear. Earth had weakened me more than I realized. I should have stopped at the cafeteria and gotten food first thing. I needed more light. I needed prayer and Shema. I rose to my feet. "I'll be back," I told my little garden. "But I can't take care of you if I don't take care of myself." Siti. My first few days back at the academy passed in a flurry of catching up, my mind slow and behind until I got enough nourishment and light into me to be equal to my peers. My teachers expected me to put in the extra hours to reach the same understanding as my classmates. I went to my classes with my dorm mates, but then hurried to the library during meals and breaks, cramming in reading assignments and writing out essays while eating yogurt and brownies. "Hey, you can do a lot of this from our room, you know," Iblis said, shoving aside my pile of books and dropping into the chair across from me in the library. "And interrupt your private time with Jera meal?" I gave her a sly grin. "No thanks." She gave a hearty laugh. "You've changed since spending time on Earth?" "Yeah, I didn't look up from the vocabulary I jotted down for a history assignment." "In what way?" "You're more relaxed, for one, and you seem to understand a sense of humor now." I lifted my eyes and nodded. "Teasing wasn't something I experienced before," I said, "at least not in a good way." "You experienced it in a bad way?" Bliss knew me better than anyone. In some ways, she knew me better than Malik. She'd seen me in Sheol, after all. "Every good experience has an equally negative counterpart," I said. "If you can imagine the negative, chances are great that I experienced it." "So instead of teasing and joking in a fun way, you experienced bullying and mocking?" The familiar shame prickled along the back of my neck, but I nodded, not letting myself back down. "But you weren't the one being mocked," she guessed. "I was," I said, looking away again. "I was raised that way. I learned how to treat others by how I was treated." "It sounds terrible," Iblis said, her tone one of compassion. "I didn't deserve her compassion. I thrived on it. I was created to feed off negativity. The more there was, the stronger I became. But you're different now." I nodded once. "Yeah. Can every renegade change?" "I don't know," I said. "I'm not sure. One thing I do know is, they had their chance to be something different. They chose to be a renegade. I never had that chance. When I got to choose, I chose not to be one." She gave me a smile. "Better late than never." I looked away. Yes, but in some ways it was too late. I felt the loss of what I'd never have as I sat across from her, my angelic friend who carried so much light with her that I couldn't touch any part of her. As wonderful as it was to return to Arcadia, my return had brought me back to physical isolation. I would never have anything else. I would never get the light of the first emissary I so craved. I would never go to Earth for a mortal life. "And how is Malik?" she asked. "He is wonderful," I said, my pain bleeding into my words in spite of my efforts to fight it. "He has taken human form and relinquished some of heaven's light to be closer to his assignment. In so doing, he's closer to my level." I sighed as I remembered the breathless moments where we had touched, where our spirits and auras mingled. "I will never be as good as he is." "Jez?" Iblis squeezed her hands together. "You are as good as him. You've just had a very different upbringing." "Very different, indeed." "At least he knows where you came from," she said. "He accepts you. Every part of you." "Yes," I said. But Malik did not know everything. She stood up. "I'm going to the cafeteria for dinner. Want to come?" I shook my head. "I've got to get through the biology assignment first." "Oh, that one's important," Iblis said. "We spent 2 weeks merging our understanding of energy and creation so we can start on healing next week." 2 weeks, I said, tapping the massive tome in front of me. "I've got 2 days. I'll leave you to it then." "Bye, Bliss," I said, waving. She paused. "That's another thing. A nickname? The old you would never have thought of one." That was true. I smiled and went back to my studying. "See, Dave." I spent the entire weekend preparing for biology class. The few weeks of Earth High School had strengthened my study habits more than my entire previous year at the academy. Who knew I'd be lacking such basic skills? By Monday morning, I felt prepared to join my classmates again. I even went with Iblis to breakfast. I greeted my friends with a smile as I buttered a slice of toast and tried not to be jealous of how Jeramiel and Iblis sat practically on top of each other, or of Dara and Iramiel, who kept finishing each other's sentences and then blushing over it. But there was one person I didn't see, and it wasn't until we were leaving the cafeteria that I realized it. "Evelis," I said, catching up to her as she put her tray away. "Where is Carubio?" "Oh." She turned to me and lowered her voice. "I forgot you haven't been here." Something about her tone raised my concerns. "What is it? What happened?" "It's gone." I stared at her, premonition prickling my spine. Gone? What do you mean? She shook her head. That's all I know. He's not here. I asked Elder Master Barakiel, and he said Kerubiel decided not to finish at the academy. So he's gone. Why did those words leave me feeling punched in the gut? My interactions with the Shade Angel had not been pleasant, but I hated to imagine his existence now. Had he become a fallen? Or was it much less ominous? Perhaps he'd been moved on to Shemayim to fulfill a different purpose. I doubted it. And no one's tried to figure out where he's gone? I asked, following her out of the cafeteria. Iblis shrugged. I'm sure he's fine, wherever he is. She would think that, because she didn't know what kinds of places existed. But I wasn't so sure. I would look for him the next time I opened a window. Master Sellafiel smiled at us as we gathered in her classroom for biology. Please send in your essays, she said, and we tapped buttons on our screens to send our carefully worded and well-thought-out paragraphs to her tablet. Today's class is very serious, she said. We're going to practice healing, but before we do so, let's go over some of the practical laws of healing. What is the first law of healing? Dara raised her hand. Know the physical biology of the body. Master Sellafiel nodded. That's right. Before you can stop the bleeding of a wound, you must know what is causing the bleeding. You must know what parts of the blood will stop the bleeding. We work within the laws of nature. We do not create our own laws. I'd learned this while doing my essay, and it fascinated me. To heal someone, we needed to understand the very essence of the molecular cells of the body. I thought of Malik's work in the hospital when he healed that boy, and my admiration increased. What is the second law of healing? Penenmi spoke up. Seek the will of the Father when performing medical miracles. And why is that? There wasn't an immediate response, though I knew we knew the answer. Finally, Jerahmiel spoke up. Because not everyone is meant to be healed, he said. His words came out clipped and cold, and I glanced over at him to see his eyes narrowed. No, Master Sellafiel said. Not everyone is meant to be healed, and we don't always understand the Father's will. Do we follow blindly? Jerahmiel said, as if he couldn't help himself. Iblis put a hand on his knee. Not blindly, Sellafiel said, though her eyes held nothing but kindness and compassion as she looked at Jerahmiel. We follow with trust until we acquire our own knowledge and understanding of the Father's will, which leads us to the third law, and the most important law. She looked out over the class. What is the third law of healing? Faith, Iblis said. We must have faith in our ability and faith that we're doing the Father's will. That's right, without that faith, we will fail in our attempts at healing. Faith. I doodled the word on my agenda, making it look beautiful and ornate, smiling a little that my handwriting could look so pretty. What was faith, exactly? How could I have it if I didn't understand what it meant? Now for the practical application. Master Sellafiel reached under her desk and pulled out a glass container. Even from here I could see small writhing organisms within the box. You've spent the past week intimately studying what creature? The earthworm, I said. I had just written an extensive paper on the biological functions of the small animal, although, to be honest, I hadn't understood why. The earthworm, Sellafiel confirmed. The earthworm is a perfect candidate for practicing healing. It's a simple organism, and one of the easiest to heal. For our classes at the academy, we automatically fulfill law number 2, following the Father's will. It's his will that you learn how to heal. Law number 1 depends on you. Did you study? Did you learn the material? Are you familiar with the intimate workings of the body of this tiny creature? I stared at the worms in the container, pulling to mind every detail I'd memorized. But the third law is the hardest. You must have faith in your ability to heal. You're a heavenly creature, blessed with the light of the first emissary. Some angels, such as light shades, have an easier time of healing than others. Some can only heal small injuries or emotional wounds or spiritual maladies. But all angels have the ability to heal, and the more often you do it, the greater your ability. I leaned back in my seat, my heart sinking within me. I did not have the light of the first emissary. The only light I had was borrowed, from Arcadia, from Shemayim, and from Elder Master Barakiel. I would not be able to heal. Master Salafiel placed the worms on a tray on her desk. I collected these injured earthworms a few hours ago from Earth. Some were left in direct sunlight too long and have started to shrivel. Others were maimed by passing feet or bicycles. All of them can be made whole again. Please, come collect a worm. Hold it in your hand, examine its wounds, and attempt to heal the injury. My classmates scooted their chairs back and hurried to the front, expressions of eagerness and excitement on their faces. Of course. What a great opportunity to heal another being. I stayed in my chair, not eager to prove to myself my inability. My classmates returned to their desks, cupping their injured earthworms in their hands. I watched them from the safety of my seat. Jazz? I looked up as Master Salafio crouched beside my chair. You didn't come get one, she said softly. I moistened my lips and looked at the tray she held in her hands. One worm remained. I'm afraid I won't be able to heal it, I said, matching her tone. I don't know if you will or won't, but if you don't try, you won't know either. I looked at her, my fear of inadequacy making my eyes burn. What if I fail? Then you try again, and again, and again. I nodded, taking some comfort from her words. All right. She held the tray out to me, and I reached in, picking up the delicate creature between two fingers. I could touch it, at least. I had enough light to do that. Then I remembered Logan and how he could feel my light. I might not be on the same level as the angels at the academy, but I was above the terrestrial level. Master Salafio walked away, leaving me to discover my capacity without an audience. I turned the tiny animal over, searching for the injury. Its back end had been flatted as if by a shoe. I closed my eyes and probed the worm with my energy, searching its consciousness for clues. It wasn't in pain, but it would not be able to dig into the soil and retrieve nutrients with an injured tail. The intestine had been crushed, along with both the dorsal and ventral vessels. The circular and longitudinal muscles were intact but flattened. What should I fix? How could I heal this tiny body? The cells needed to regenerate. They needed to propagate new life, perhaps unnaturally since crushed intestines didn't normally expand and function again. I gathered my light and energy into my palm like I did when opening a window, like I did when making my plants in the atrium grow. I ignored the murmur of voices and conversation around me and focused on the little worm in my hand. Then I sent that energy into the injured anatomy, willing it to grow and strengthen. The light spilled out around the earthworm, stimulating new growth in the cells and nerves it touched before dissipating into the air around us. The worm wiggled its back end, though it remained flattened. But something had happened. Encouraged, I tried again, gathering the light around me and from within me, energizing the cells and tissues. The cuticle and epidermis expanded, but it was hollow, as the internal organs had not regenerated. And I was spent. My fingers tingled and my body quivered. I felt like a swimmer deprived of oxygen, or so I imagined. I leaned my head back and closed my eyes. A hand caressed my wings, and I lifted my head as Master Salafiel came over. She took the worm from me and enclosed it in her hand. Good job, she said, smiling at me. You made significant progress. You are capable. I didn't succeed, I whispered, lacking the strength to raise my voice. Nobody did, but you did something. You proved you have the ability. She dropped the worm back into my hand, whole and wriggling, healed by her touch. Then she stepped back to the front of the classroom. Great effort, class. As you can see, healing takes lots of strength and practice. At your own pace, return the worm to the tray. Today's assignment is to study any aspects of earthworm anatomy you felt were lacking as you attempted to heal your worm. Where you thought you knew everything, a gap in understanding may have become apparent during today's exercise. We will try again next class. Strengthen yourselves spiritually and seek the light, because the more you have, the more you can access it for healing. Class dismissed. I remained where I was for several more minutes. My classmates rose one by one, also exhibiting signs of exhaustion. This reassured me. Even those with greater light struggled with this ability. Perhaps with practice, I would be capable of healing. It would be a valuable gift indeed. Chapter 30. I was one of the last ones to leave the classroom. Iblis and Jeremiel spoke to each other, and then she got up and left him in the classroom. A moment later, I stood, feeling my strength had returned enough to do so. I deposited the worm on the tray and lingered as I left the classroom, hoping Jeremiel would join me. I was not disappointed. "Are you all right?" I asked him as we walked alone down the corridor. He shrugged. "Took a lot of effort, but you managed." "Yeah, I healed the worm." I nodded. I glanced around to make sure we were alone, and then I lowered my voice. "I have a favor to ask." He shot me a curious stare. "What?" I slowed and then stopped walking. "Remember when you offered to loan me your dagger?" "Yes." A light sparked in his eyes. "Could you still do that for me?" I was whispering, barely talking. He gave a long bob of his head. "What are you planning?" My face warmed. "I just want to help someone, and I need a dagger to be able to do so. It's not fair. He shouldn't be punished because of my mistake." Was I rationalizing to myself why it was okay to take a dagger? Again, no. Logan needed my help. I would give him every advantage I could. "Can you get it?" "I can do it," Jeremiel said. "But I'll need the dagger back when you finish. Will you return it?" Was he thinking of how I'd given my own dagger to Hasatan? No, he didn't know about that. The news hadn't been spread. "Of course. But let's not talk about this again. Be patient. I'll let you know when I have it." "Thank you, Jeremiel," I said. "Don't mention it. I know you'd help me if I needed it." "Of course." He gave a half smile, then moved past me down the hall. I had history class next, which was always one of my favorites. I put my anticipation about Jeremiel's dagger out of my mind and hurried to class. "Name some of the great wars you remember from your time on Earth," Master Remiel said, walking in front of the classroom. "The Korean War, World War II, the Crusades." I kept quiet, having almost no knowledge of Earth history and its wars. Master Remiel nodded. "Does anyone know what started these wars?" "Read," Vanina said. "Power-hungry men," Daniel said. "Yes and no," Master Remiel said, tapping his chin. "Almost every single war that occurs on Earth can be traced back to the influence of one being." "You mean it's not just the spiteful nature of man that causes wars and disagreements?" Panemon asked. Men are spiteful, all right," Master Remiel said. "But on their own, men will settle back. They lack the animosity to fuel a fight for too long. Without the murmurings of evil, Cain would have been annoyed at Abel, but he wouldn't have killed him." "So what causes wars, then, if not men?" Israfel asked. "What do you think?" "The Tamter aren't strong enough, are they?" Darla asked. "They can't goad a man into something that dark." "No," I said. "It would need to be a spirit strong enough to influence the man. A spirit that could channel itself through the man and speak its own ideas." The class fell silent as I spoke, but I couldn't silence myself, even when I felt the eyes of my classmates turning to stare at me. "Experience could do that," Jeremiel asked. I glanced at Master Remiel, but he remained silent, eyes on me. Apparently he was willing to let me take the reins on this one. "A fallen." Ermiel furrowed his brow. "But how?" "By using an underling," I said. That brought a confused, excited murmur. I'd taught them something new. "What's an underling?" Daniel asked. "An underling," Master Remiel said, standing and moving to the board, "is a human who makes a deal with the devil. He pledges his life in devotion and servitude to darkness, and a fallen becomes his taskmaster, remaining with the human through the rest of mortality and enforcing the eternal contract." "What's in it for the human?" Jeremiel asked. "Longer life, power, respect. Remember that Hasatan was one of the greatest angels before he fell, and his light turned to a great and terrible, dark power." I wrote his words down with a sort of detachment. I knew this, but it felt odd hearing my father described this way. "And what's in it for the fallen?" Iblis asked. "The fallen consumes some of the mortal soul, some of its light, if you will, and is enabled to stay on Earth as a corporeal being as long as the symbiotic relationship exists." Israfel asked. "Is the fallen like a dementor and just sucks up the essence?" "No." Remiel gave a grim smile. He pierces his neck with his mouth and drinks his blood." That brought a gasp from Zophiel, and murmurs erupted throughout the room. "Yes," Remio said, speaking over them, "you have discovered the origins of the myth of the vampire." "Can we recognize an underling on Earth?" Dara asked. Sometimes it's hard because there is so much darkness and so much temptation on Earth. But if you encounter an underling, be aware, something far more sinister is behind the puppet strings if an underling is around. I leaned back in my chair, narrowing my eyes. I had that feeling in my chest, like there was something I should remember but couldn't. Something about this conversation felt significant and important. I searched my mind but could think of nothing. I shrugged it off. It would come to me if it was important. I had never found the stars so fascinating. I stood at the top of the library tower with my astronomy class, Master Puriel instructing us on how to use our light to magnify our vision. She was saying something else, something about the creation of the stars, but I was caught up with one fact that hadn't occurred to me before. This was the same sky every person on Earth looked up at. They might see different stars depending on the time of year and what hemisphere they were on, but the people I cared about on Earth, the ones in New Orleans, could look up at the sky right now and see what I saw. For some reason, that knowledge impacted me. It made me feel closer to them somehow. "I want you to create this galaxy in a 3D holographic image," Master Puriel said, and I paid attention again. "In the galaxy you create, include at least 3 life-sustaining planets. That means they'll need an outside energy source and they can't be too far or too close to it. The rest of the requirements are listed on the class syllabus." Lightning flashed in the distance, drawing our attention to the expansive sky sprawling in front of us. "Well," she said, "let's hurry and get out of here before it starts to rain on us again. Spring showers and everything." My classmates filed past me, walking across the translucent ground of the tower, grumbling about how it rained almost every night this time of year. I stayed where I was, though the spring drizzle carried a biting chill to it. I had to wait until everyone left, because I wanted to open a window and find Karubiel. I also wanted to see Malik. I hadn't seen him since I'd left Earth, but I needed to search for Karubiel first, and I wasn't sure I'd have enough energy to open 2 windows. So I concentrated on Karubiel. I gathered my energy together and spun open a window, feeling the pull on my essence. The flickering orange spiraled outward, revealing darkness. Nothing showed in the window. I concentrated, seeking out Karubiel's dark energy. "Where are you?" I whispered. I sensed a flickering of an aura just out of sight, at the edge of my vision. I narrowed my eyes and tried to hone in on it. The view in the window rippled, like a rock thrown into water, but nothing appeared. Why could I not find him? I knew he was there. And then it occurred to me, the knowledge settling like a heavy stone in my belly. There was only one place he could go where he couldn't be found. He was in Sheol. He'd become a fallen. I bowed my head, sadness pulling at my soul as the rain consolidated on my eyelashes and dripped from my face. I considered our last conversation, his hints that he'd stepped outside the natural laws of heaven. Was there something more I could have done to help him? His own choices had led him to this, but it still hurt my heart. There was goodness in Karubiel, I knew there was, but it would be driven out of him in Sheol. Any remaining light would soon vanish. I waved away the window and created a new one, this time concentrating on Malik. I was weaker than before, but I still managed to open a window. Malik sat on the sill of an earth window in a large, second-story bedroom overlooking a quiet street outside. I zoomed in on the view. Malik was in angel form, wearing his academy uniform, white wings opening and closing behind him as he studied a sleeping form on the large bed in the room. "Logan." "Malik," I whispered. He turned his head toward the window, toward the sky, toward me. "Jeez." I allowed a half smile. He'd heard me. We still had that connection. "How is Logan?" He looked back toward the sleeping form and lifted a shoulder. "Things are odd. He doesn't like me. I can only help him when I'm in this form, but I almost feel like I'm infringing on his free will. He's pricked by my light, but he's restless." He leaned his head on the windowsill and sighed, facing the night sky again. He needs a friend. He needs you. The admission seemed to pain Malik. I'll be back, I promised. I have a plan. I'm going to help him. I'm worried, Malik said. This has become too personal. We've invested too much. If we lose him... Is he talking to you? The voice behind me startled me, and I waved the window away as I jumped away from the edge of the tower and whirled around. Jeremiel stood there, his eyes flicking from me to the spot where the window had been, the drizzling rain plastering his blonde hair to his head. No, I stuttered. No, of course not. That's not possible. My face warmed. How could I have become such a pathetic liar? I'd forgotten the key rule of deception. Always include a grain of truth. Did you open a portal? He asked, clearly not accepting my response. It was a window. He wasn't talking to me, just talking. He was watching. I heard you speaking first. Heaven's throne. How long had he stood there? I was wishing I could speak to him. Jeremiel narrowed his eyes at me, and I felt a stab of guilt for lying, but I didn't want to add opening a portal to my list of wrong deeds. Anyway, Tirachmil reached into his bag and pulled out a dagger. It had a green hilt with ribbons of gold wrapping around it. He held it out to me, and I uttered a small gasp. This is my dagger, he said. I took it during class today and then left early. No alarms went off. No one noticed. I guess they don't expect us to steal our own daggers. I wanted to argue with his word choice. We weren't stealing, borrowing. He couldn't steal what was his. Well, they probably should after what happened last year. Jeremiel gave a short laugh. I reached out to take the dagger. A small shock jolted up my arm when I touched it, and I pulled back. It's all right, Jeremiel said. I give you permission to use it. You'll get used to each other. I wrapped my hand around the hilt again and lifted the dagger. It warmed beneath my touch, uncomfortably hot. Put it away before someone sees it, he warned. I opened my bag and dropped the dagger inside. Thank you so much, I said, gratitude swelling my heart. I hesitated, then asked, how do I use it? Right, Master Ingram hasn't allowed you to practice with us. You have to stab the Temptar in the head. If you only graze it, it will skulk off to heal its wounds, but won't be dispatched. And a fallen. The dagger can dispatch a fallen the same way. A saber can dispatch one no matter where you strike it. But we aren't given those except at practice, and I couldn't remove one from the wall. That would look too obvious anyway, I said. And I only need it to dispatch with the Temptare. Yeah, to destroy a fallen you would need a sword of truth. A sword of truth. Only the archangels had access to those. So if a fallen sets a human in their sights, a guardian won't be enough to save them, Jeremiel confirmed. But a guardian can buy them time. My finger stroked the edge of the dagger in my bag. Will humans be able to see the dagger? I wondered how that would look at lunchtime if I withdrew a dagger and attacked the air around Logan. No, they can't feel it either. A dagger can't hurt a mortal. I nodded. Or an angel. That's right, they're made to attack the beings of darkness. His eyes flashed, and he grimaced. What is it? I asked, reading the displeasure on his face. It's nothing. No, it's something, I insisted. What's wrong? He hesitated. There must be some weapon the underworld has, he said. Or the first war would have been very short-lived. How do they fight us? It was an excellent question, and one I didn't know the answer to. I fingered the chain tattoo across my forearm. I don't know. I wasn't a part of that first battle. Yeah, he shrugged. Good luck, Jez. Give me the dagger when you return. I will. I waited, wanting to open the window again and finish speaking with Malik, but Jerahmil moved to the edge of the tower and leaned over the railing, clasping his hands together. I sensed his desire to be alone, so I left him there, peering into the night sky. Now that I had the dagger, my sole desire was to return to Earth. I wanted to be with Malik, and I wanted to help Logan. But day after day passed, and Elder Master Barakiel did not summon me. Some of you will try out for the Skyball team next year, Master Sabriel said during our next flying class. This class made me anxious. It was the one I most desired to excel in, and it was also the one I most struggled with. My classmates stood on the edges of the 6-foot wall she'd erected in the pitch, looking down on her as she spoke. Not me. I stood on a 3-foot-high box. But to be considered for the team, you have to be good at not just flying, you have to be able to fly and throw, catch, synergize, and utilize your gifts at one time. So today when you lift into the air, I want you to find a classmate and synergize in midair, both of you are magnifying one of your gifts. I waited for her to finish talking to the rest of the class and approach me. We both knew that wasn't what I'd be doing. Master Sabriel reached my box. Ready to get liftoff? I sighed. At least the wings flap when I tell them to. That had been an improvement in our last class. Give them a warning that you're about to fly, bend your knees and begin your pre-flight flapping. I did as she told me, and to my delight, my wings fluttered at the same time. At the same speed. The moment you push off the box, flap them fast enough to catch the updraft. You want to feel suspended in the air for a moment. Ready? Go. I leapt from the box and my wings quickened their pace, and for a moment, a tiny moment, they caught the air currents and held me aloft. It was only a split second, and then my feet settled back to the ground. I felt it, I said, excited. Good, Master Sabriel said. Do this over and over again today. They'll get more accustomed to it. The pre-flight will streamline, and you'll learn how to bend and move your wings to manipulate the air currents rather than wait for them. I nodded. She returned to the rest of the class, and I resumed my place on my box. I would learn to fly yet.